Hello all, welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been picked up from page number 8 of The Hindu, from warp speed to reset the state of India-US ties. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the state of the relationship or the ties that India and US shares, specifically 1 year after the visit of the Indian Prime Minister to the United States. We'll also be discussing about what were the key areas or the high areas of expectations, what were the subsequent challenges, as well as the areas of stagnation, particularly with respect to that of the multilateral cooperation and also other areas of internal as well as external tensions. We'll also be discussing about how it is important for the leaders of both the sides for the upcoming engagements in order to enhance the bilateral relations between India and the United States. The next article has been picked up from page number 14 of the Indian Express, Powers of the Speaker. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about how relevant and how important is the office of the Speaker as the 18th Lok Sabha actually prepares to meet, where the key allies of the ruling coalition are actually expected to be jockeying for the post of the Speaker. The third article has been picked up from page number 8 of The Hindu, a push for more climate action. So this particular article discusses about the recent landmark judgment of the ILTOS, that is nothing but the International Tribunal for the Laws of Seas, that actually declared that the greenhouse emissions constitute marine pollution under UNCLOS. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what are these organizations of UNCLOS as well as ITLOS. The next article has been picked up from page number 13 of The Hindu. PM Kisan Nidhi installment released to around 9.3 crore farmers. So in this article, we'll be discussing about the significance, the constituents, as well as the characteristic features of this particular scheme of PM Kisan Nidhi in the backdrop of the union government actually releasing the 17th installment to the scheme. The last article for the day has been picked up from page number 16 of The Hindu. India welcomes Egypt, Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia as well as Ethiopia joining BRICS. So in this particular article, as we know, India has actually welcomed these nations as the representatives of these countries have actually met for the very first time in a key meeting that has been hosted recently by Russia. So with respect to that of the prelims examination, we'll be discussing about this particular organization of BRICS as well as its relevance. We will conclude the session by discussing few prelims as well as mains practice questions. Now let us get into the discussion. The first article for the day, from warp speed to reset the state of India-US ties. So this is of course an interesting article as it discusses the ties between India and the United States, especially for the period of 1 year after the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. And here we'll also be discussing about what were the areas of high expectations from that of the India-US ties, but what were the subsequent challenges, especially in terms of the multilateral cooperation. And added to that, we'll also be discussing about the external and the internal tensions which were actually affecting the bilateral ties between both the sides in the changing geopolitics. So, we'll be discussing about the India-US relations in this article, which is a part of international relations, and also we can map this particular topic to GS paper 2 under mains examination under international relations, specifically under the topic of effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. So moving forward, there has been a question in the mains examination in 2021 on the US facing an existential threat in the form of China. So here, any kind of changing geopolitics and the impact it actually has on India is very, very important. Now let us understand what this particular article is talking about, okay? So, the article discusses the current status of India-US relations, highlighting the key areas of cooperation, the strategic convergences, as well as the key challenges that need to be addressed in order to strengthen the bilateral partnership between both the sides. So for that, it is always important for us to understand the relationship that India and US actually shared historically, and then let us move into understanding the current one, okay? So if you see the historical context, starting from before independence, what happened is there had been influential figures like Henry David Thoreau, who was actually, a philosopher, he was a poet, etc. And he actually inspired our historical figures like Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And also we had Vivekananda visiting the United States of America in 1893, and this actually highlighted India's spiritualism. And also we have the Ghadar Party, which was actually formed in San Francisco in the year 1913. Moving forward, if you actually see in the post-independence till the period of 1971, India actually maintained a non-aligned stance during the Cold War, leading to limited interaction that India always shared with that of the United States. And also, US perceived India as too close to that of the Soviet Union, and the US provided significant aid to India during the droughts that we actually faced in the mid-1960s. Moving on, let us actually see what was the kind of relationship that India and US shared from 1971 to 1998. So, the relations deteriorated during the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War due to US support for that of Pakistan. And the first Indian nuclear test actually took place in 1974, which further strained the relationship from both the sides. And the end of the Cold War and India's economic liberalization that actually took place in the 1990s, that is the LPG reforms, began improving the relations that both the sides shared. And US imposed sanctions following India's nuclear test again in 1998, which were later lifted. Then if you see, for a decade of 1998 to 2008, we can see President Bill Clinton's visit to India in 2000, which actually marked a turning point in relations that both the countries shared. And the 2008 civil nuclear deal ended the India's nuclear isolation, and significantly it improved the bilateral relations between both the sides. Next, if we see, let us see the key areas of cooperation between India and US, whether, what is the stand in the current, economic trade, etc. Okay. So, the US is India's biggest trading partner. And also, if we see, it has significant trade in goods and services, with the US being a major destination for Indian software exports. This is very, very important. And also, large foreign direct investments, that is the FDI flows between the two countries, are actually very, very significant. Then moving on to the defense cooperation that both the sides actually share is that there are key military exercises both in terms of, army, the navy, etc. So, if you see army, we have the Yudh Abhyas, then you have Vajra Prahar, that is the special forces, and then the navy participate in the exercise of Malabar. Then COPE India, that is the air force, as well as Tiger Triumph, which is actually a tri-services exercise. Okay, there are also foundational agreements that were actually signed, such as GSOMIA in 2002. This was actually, we will actually come to the details of it, the LEMOA, as well as the COMCASA in 2018, as well as the BECA 2020. And important dialogues include also the 2+2 ministerial dialogue and the defense policy group. Now let us understand these agreements that were actually signed. The first one is actually GSOMIA, which stands for General Security of Military Information Agreement, and this was actually signed in the year 2002, and this is in order to facilitate any kind of military intelligence sharing between India and US. The second one is LEMOA, that is nothing but the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, which came into existence in 2016. And here, India and US can use each other's military bases in order to carry out, the repairs as well as any kind of resupplying. The next one is actually COMCASA. This is COMCASA, which actually stands for Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. This is in order to share as well as secure the communication exchange between both the sides. And then if you see, it is the BECA, that is Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, which was signed between both the sides in the year 2020. It's all about exchanging the geospatial information between the two nations, and this will actually enhance the US operational efficiency, which is currently operated by that of India. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually look at the strategic interests that both of them actually share. The first one, there were shared concerns over China's rise with cooperation in forums like the Quad, and here it is important to know about this organization. And also the US sees India as key in balancing the power in the Indo-Pacific region. So moving forward, looking at space and technology, here ISRO and NASA have actually come together, in order to collaborate with NISAR, that is the NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. And also in 2023, ISRO signed with that of NASA the Artemis Accords in order to participate in peaceful and sustainable civil exploration of outer space. Moving forward, ICET, it is actually a joint initiative by national security advisors of the US and India in order to foster cooperation and innovation in key technology domains such as artificial intelligence, telecom, space, biotech, semiconductors, defense, etc., which was launched in the year 2023. Okay. And there is also multilateral cooperation where you can actually see including the United Nations, you can see G20, ASEAN, then Regional Forum, then International Monetary Fund, World Bank, as well as WTO. And India is also one of the 12 countries partnering with the United States on the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, that is the IPEF. This is also very important. And also, if you see with respect to that of cultural exchange, that is specifically in terms of Indian diaspora, around 4.4 million Indian Americans play a crucial role in shaping the bilateral relations. And also, Indian Americans are influential in US politics and they contribute significantly to the economy as well. Okay. So now what are the current challenges that both the sides actually faces? That the first one is diverging views on Russia's war in Ukraine. Here, if you see, US has actually framed it purely in terms of international rule of law and humanitarian principles. Whereas if you see India, it has actually, very clearly put forth the historical perspective considering any kind of disruption to the global south on the food, fertilizer, energy security, etc. And also it is important to understand that US has not imposed any kind of sanctions on India for buying Russian oil, but there is an underlying tension. The second one is concerns over India's handling of issues like democracy as well as human rights. The US State Department's comments on the state of democracy in India and its consistent criticism in the religious freedom reports have actually angered the Indian government, widening the gap between both the sides. Next one is there have been tensions over an alleged Indian plot to assassinate the US-based Khalistani separatist leader. Next one, there are also, increased tensions with respect to India's closer engagement with that of Russia, because India did not directly condemn Russia for its attack on Ukraine fully, and the US may have apprehensions about India's relations with that of Russia, especially at a time where India is actually importing oil as well from Russia, and also potential meetings between Indian and Russian leaders at the Shanghai Cooperation as well as the BRICS summits. And also there is significant diplomatic vacancy. That is, there is a lack of full-time Indian ambassador in Washington for months, and this has impacted the coordination between both the sides. Okay. So moving forward, how do we actually conclude this answer is that in order to strengthen India-US ties, that is when a question is asked about, what is the kind of challenges US faces with that of, India's inclination or cooperation with that of Russia, or what is the China factor here, always the conclusion has to be very, very neutral. Okay. So here, to strengthen India-US ties, both the nations should prioritize a very, very transparent dialogue, align on strategic interests in the Indo-Pacific, and also address the mutual concerns through diplomatic channels, ensuring cooperation in the areas of defense, in trade, in technology for a robust bilateral partnership. The next article that we'll be discussing about is powers of the speaker. So this particular article actually is in news because as the 18th Lok Sabha actually prepares to meet, the key allies of the ruling coalition are actually said to be jockeying. Jockeying means they are actually competing for the post of the speaker. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the office of the speaker, how important is or how relevant is the office of the pro tem speaker, the deputy speaker, etc., as it can be mapped to the subject of polity for the prelims examination, and for the mains examination, we can map it to GS paper 2, polity and governance and constitutional posts. So moving on, if you actually look, there has been a question which has been asked in the year 2018 in the prelims examination with respect to that of the office of the speaker. So any kind of constitutional post such as, the speaker, the president, the vice president, deputy speaker, how are they elected, the eligibility criteria and the functions, roles and responsibilities are important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is actually discussing about. Okay. So As the 18th Lok Sabha actually prepares to meet, the key allies in the ruling coalition are said to be competing for the post of the Speaker. And if you know, after a pro tem or a temporary Speaker administers the oath of office to the new members, the Speaker is chosen to be the presiding officer of the House. Now, it is important for us to understand what is the office of Speaker. Over here, first let us understand how did this particular office of the Speaker and Deputy Speaker actually came into existence. Okay, so the roles of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker were first established in the year 1921 in India under the Government of India Act 1990, which is also called as the Montague-Chelmsford Reforms. Okay. So initially, these positions were referred to as the President as well as the Deputy President, and by the Government of India Act 1935, the nomenclatures of these had actually changed. That is, the President and the Deputy President actually changed to Speaker and Deputy Speaker respectively, and this was actually in existence until 1947. So moving forward, let us understand what is the office of the Speaker. So what does the Constitution say? As per Article 93 of the Constitution, it mandates the election of both the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. The Speaker actually serves as the constitutional as well as the ceremonial head of the House, and each House of the Parliament actually has its own presiding officer. For example, the lower house, that is the Lok Sabha, has a Speaker as well as a Deputy Speaker, while the Rajya Sabha has a Chairman as well as a Deputy Chairman. Here, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha actually presides over its sessions, and according to Article 94 of the Constitution, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha must be chosen from among the members and must vacate his office if they cease to be a member of the House. Now moving on, let us actually see the eligibility criteria of a person to become the Speaker. Okay, so the Constitution of India actually mandates that the Speaker must be a member of the House definitely, although there are no specific set of qualifications that are actually given to hold the office of a Speaker. So although no specific qualifications are mentioned, a deep understanding of what is the Constitution as well as the laws of India is actually highly advantageous in case if a person is actually chosen for this role. Typically, a member from the ruling party is elected as the Speaker, and over the time this has actually become a convention. That is, a process has been set or developed where the ruling party members, they nominate its candidates after informal consultation with the leaders of other parties and the groups in the House. So moving forward, now let us actually see how does this voting actually take place. Okay, the Speaker along with the Deputy Speaker is chosen from among the Lok Sabha members by a simple majority. This is very, very important. In which case it is simple majority, in which case it is actually special majority, and what is the meaning of this is very, very important for the examination. So a simple majority of those present and voting in the House is actually required for appointing a Speaker, and after a candidate is actually selected, their name is usually proposed by the Prime Minister or the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs. So moving forward, now let us actually look at the term of office of the Speaker. So the Speaker actually holds his office from the date of election until just before the first meeting of the next Lok Sabha, which is typically for a period of 5 years. And this Speaker is actually eligible for re-election. This is also very, very important. And even if you see when the Lok Sabha is dissolved, the office of the Speaker actually is still relevant. That is, the Speaker still remains in office until the newly elected Lok Sabha actually convenes. Now moving forward, let us actually see the roles and the responsibilities that the Speaker actually performs. So if we see the constitutional powers, according to Article 95, the Speaker shall preside over the sittings of the House, of the Lok Sabha, and shall maintain order as well as decorum of the House. And according to Article 96 of the Constitution, the Speaker shall have the right to take part in the proceedings of the House and to speak in any sitting of the House or of any committee of the House of which he or she is a member, but shall not have the right to vote in the first instance. That is, they can actually have or cast their vote, and that is called as the casting vote, that is mentioned in Article 100 of the Constitution. So let's move forward. Article 97 actually says the Speaker shall be responsible for the certification of money bills and the financial bills and shall have the power to direct that any other bill be treated as money bill or a financial bill, and in this case his or her decision is actually final. Next one, Article 100 actually says that the Speaker shall have the casting vote in the event of a tie in the voting of the House. That is, in case of a tie, then the Speaker's, final call will actually be in terms of the casting vote. So now let us actually look into the other powers and functions of the Speaker. The first one is interpretation of the rules, okay? So, the Speaker is said to be the final interpreter of the Constitution or the provisions of the Constitution within the House, okay? That is, the rules of procedure and the conduct of business in the Lok Sabha and parliamentary precedents within the House. So, the rulings made by the Speaker on these matters are actually respected and are binding in nature. The next one is presiding over the joint sittings. As we saw that the Speaker presides over the joint sittings of both the houses of the Parliament, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, which is summoned by the President in order to resolve any kind of deadlocks on the bills. Next one, he has the power of adjournment, that is adjournment of sitting. This actually means the Speaker can adjourn the House or suspend a meeting if there is an absence of 1/10 of the total membership of the House, and this is actually called as the quorum of the House. The next one is disqualifying members. The Speaker over here actually is given the power in order to determine the disqualification of the members of the Rajya Sabha on grounds of defection, which is mentioned in the 10th schedule of the Constitution. And also, if you see, the 52nd Amendment to the Constitution gives this power to the Speaker, and the Supreme Court actually ruled in 1992 in the Kyoto-Holohan case that the Speaker's decision is actually subject to judicial review. Moving on, chairing of the IPG. What do you mean by IPG? It is actually the Indian Parliamentary Group, okay? So, the Speaker serves as the ex officio chairman of the IPG, linking the Indian Parliament with various parliaments worldwide. Additionally, the Speaker is the ex officio chairman of the Conference of the Presiding Officers of the Legislative Bodies in India. Next one, if you see constitution of committees. Here, the Speaker constitutes the House committees and directs their functioning. Here, the Speaker actually nominates the chairpersons of all the parliamentary committees. And if you see certain committees like the Business Advisory Committee, the General Purpose Committee and the Rules Committee, they actually directly operate under the chairmanship of the Speaker itself. Next one is guarding privileges, okay? So here, the Speaker is set to safeguard the rights and the privileges of the House, the various committees associated as well as its members, and it is at the Speaker's discretion to refer any question of privilege to the committees of privileges for examination, investigation or for report. Moving forward, now let us see what are the instances in which a Speaker can actually be removed from the office. The Speaker actually we saw remains in office for a period of 5 years in the Lok Sabha. However, there are certain conditions under which the Speaker may have to vacate the office earlier than this period of 5 years in case, that is first one, if he ceases to be a member of the Lok Sabha or if he or she resigns by writing to the Deputy Speaker. And next one, if he or she is removed by a resolution passed by majority of all the members in the Lok Sabha. And this kind of resolution can be moved only after giving 14 days advance notice to him or to her. And when this resolution for removal of the Speaker is under consideration of the House, he or she may be present. That is, they can be seated in the House, but they cannot preside over the House. However important the role and the responsibilities of the Speaker is with respect to that of the Lok Sabha, there are certain concerns that are surrounding the office of the Speaker. If we can quickly go through. First one, there is actually no partisanship. Okay, there is an observation that the Speaker has actually been accused of bias over a political party because generally they are picked up from the ruling political party. So this actually compromises the impartiality and the neutrality or the neutral nature and undermines credibility and integrity. Next one, since they use that discretion, there is also accusation of arbitrary or biased use and also perceptions of unfairness and lack of transparency. So that is why they have said the decision of the Speaker is actually subjected to judicial review in 1992. In example is the Kyoto-Holohan case, which actually took place in 1992. The next one is handling the disruptions. Okay, so it is actually observed that there have been reports that actually states that there are criticism of the speaker for handling the disruptions in the house and in maintaining the order and the decorum and the quorum of the house. The next one is relationship with that of the media, that there has been accusations that there is insufficient information that is actually provided to the media, that is there is criticism for the media relation that this particular person has. The last one is handling of disqualification cases. Okay, so since the speaker actually has the authority in order to deal with the defection under the 10th schedule of the constitution, here the responsibility for deciding the disqualification is in his or her discretion, so that is being condemned, and criticism for handling such cases, and this can be seen in the Karnataka MLA's disqualification case 2019, where the Supreme Court has actually recommended to amend the constitution, that is this particular provision of the speaker's discretion. Now moving forward, there was a term that we actually saw, that is speaker pro tem. So let us actually see this particular office. So pro tem, this means temporary. So when the speaker of the previous Lok Sabha vacates his office immediately before the first meeting of the newly elected Lok Sabha, then what does the president actually do is that he appoints a member of the Lok Sabha as the speaker pro tem, and he is generally the senior most member of the house, and the president himself administers oath to this particular speaker pro tem, and he or she presides over the first sitting of the newly elected Lok Sabha and shall have all the powers just as the speaker actually has. And the main responsibility is to administer the oaths to the new members and to enable the house to elect the new speaker. And also, when the new speaker is elected by the house, the office of the speaker pro tem actually ceases to exist at once. The next article that we'll be discussing about is a push for more climate action. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the recent landmark judgment that has been given by the ITLOS, that is nothing but the International Tribunal on the Laws of Seas. So this particular article, let us actually see what is the meaning of UNCLOS and then what is the meaning of marine pollution, as it's a part of climate change, and we can map this particular topic with respect to current events of national and international importance for the prelims examination. And for the mains examination, we can actually map it to environmental pollution and degradation as well as conservation. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question which had been asked in the year 2016 on the UNCCD, that is the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. So these kind of conventions are very, very important with respect to that of your environment and ecology of your examination. Now let us understand what this article is talking about. So in a recent landmark ruling, the International Tribunal for the Law of Seas has declared that the greenhouse gas emission constitute marine pollution under UNCLOS. Okay, so here what is the takeaway is that the tribunal concluded that the greenhouse gas emissions constitute the pollution of the marine environment within the meaning of Article 1 subclause 1 subclause 4 of UNCLOS. That means United Nations Convention on Laws of Seas, and this definition actually includes the introduction of substances or any kind of energy into the marine environment that actually results in the ocean warming, the sea level rise, acidification, deoxygenation, that actually causes any kind of harmful effects of the marine life on the human health. Next one is the judgment actually mandates that the countries should actually act against the vagaries of nature, especially the climate change, in order to protect the marine environment under UNCLOS. Okay, so here it is important to understand what is this UN Convention on Laws of Seas. This is also known as the Law of the Seas, that actually lays down a comprehensive regime of law and order for the world's ocean as well as the seas. This particular convention was actually adopted in 1982 and came into force in the year 1994. And it is important to note that India ratified it in the year 1995. Whether India ratified it or not, whether India is signatory or not, whether India is a member or not, all these are very, very important for the examination. So, UNCLOS divides the marine areas into 5 main zones, namely the internal waters, the territorial sea, the contiguous zone, the exclusive economic zone, as well as the high seas. So now let us actually look into the details of what it is over here. So looking at this particular image, we can actually see first one is the baseline. So this is actually the baseline you can see here. So this is actually defined as the low water line along the coast as officially recognized by the coastal state. So if the coastal state recognizes that this is the point of low waters, that will be the area where the baseline is actually assumed. The next one is internal waters. This is actually the internal waters that you can see in this particular image. So this is located landward of the baseline. So from the baseline towards the land, if you see, it is the internal water, and the coastal state has full sovereignty over here, similar to the land territory. This can actually include different kinds of bay, ports, inlets, rivers, lakes which are connected to the sea, and there is no right of innocent passage for foreign vessels. That is, foreign vessels can actually not move into or cannot traverse the internal waters, okay, because the entire sovereignty is claimed by that particular coastal state. Next one is territorial sea. If you see the 12 nautical miles from this baseline, this actually includes the territorial sea. So here extends to 12 nautical miles from the baseline, and the coastal state has complete sovereignty over the water, the seabed, the subsoil as well as the airspace in this region, and this allows innocent passage for the foreign vessels, which must not be prejudicial to the peace and the security of the coastal state. So as far as the foreign vessels actually does not hamper the security and the sovereignty or the peace or security of this particular region, then there is actually they are actually allowed for this innocent passage. Next, moving on to the contiguous zone. This is nothing but this is the next nautical miles where the territorial sea actually ends, and that is where a contiguous zone actually starts, and this actually stretches to about 12 nautical miles. So extends from 12 to 24 nautical miles from the baseline. So over here it is actually extending till here, which is 12 plus 12, which makes 24 nautical miles. And this allows the coastal state to enforce laws concerning customs, taxation, immigration, as well as any kind of pollution. And here, the jurisdiction is limited to the ocean surface and the floor and does not include the airspace over here. This is very, very important. Next, moving forward is the exclusive economic zone. Okay, so this actually stretches up to 200 nautical miles from this particular baseline. So when baseline is here, up to 200 nautical miles is your exclusive economic zone. And here, the coastal state has sovereign rights for exploring, for exploiting, conserving and managing the natural resources of both the seabed as well as the subsoil. And it also includes the rights to produce energy from the water over there, the currents as well as the wind. And here, the freedom of navigation and overflight of the other states with limited exceptions are actually provided in this EEZ. Now moving on is this area beyond the 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone from the baseline is actually the area of high seas. That is, this area is EEZ. This is considered as the international waters and the common heritage of all the mankind. That is global common, and this is free for all the states to use for peaceful purposes, including your navigation, marine science as well as any kind of undersea exploration. So apart from this UNCLOS, it is important to know what is this institution of International Tribunal for the Laws of Seas. So it is an independent judicial body which was established in the year 1982 by UNCLOS, and it has jurisdiction over any dispute concerning the interpretation or application of this particular convention. Okay. The next article that we'll be discussing about is PM Kisan Nidhi installment released to 9.3 crore farmers, and this particular scheme is actually in news in the backdrop of the union government actually releasing around 17th installment of this particular scheme to around 9.4 crore farmers. Okay. In this particular article, we'll be discussing this particular scheme of PM Kisan Nidhi scheme, and this is actually a part of the welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population GS2 under governance by the centre as well as the states. Moving forward, there has been a question that has been asked in the previous year in the prelims examination in the year 2020 on the Kisan credit card scheme. So these kind of welfare schemes which is targeted specifically to the farmers, the vulnerable section of the population, the characteristic features, the aim, objectives, vision, mission, the beneficiaries and the eligibility criteria to be enrolled in the scheme are all important specifically for your prelims examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So, the union government has actually released 17th installment of the PM Kisan Nidhi scheme. Moving forward, let us actually understand the details of the release. The beneficiaries include the scheme's latest installment will benefit approximately 9.3 crore farmers, and the total disbursed amount is around 20,000 crores. Now let us understand what is this scheme and the characteristic features. So PM Kisan is nothing but a central sector scheme. So what do you mean by central sector scheme? It is actually 100% funded by the central government, okay? Whereas the centrally sponsored scheme is actually majorly funded by the central government, and the implementation of the scheme is actually by the center. So, it is a central sector scheme with 100% funding from the government of India, which has been operational from 2018. And the objective actually is to supplement the financial needs of the farmers in procuring various inputs in order to ensure proper health of the crop, and also make sure that they actually produce appropriate yields and also with the anticipated farm income. And here you need to understand this primarily aims the farmers from falling into the clutches of the money lenders, where non-institutional money lending actually it actually imposes a lot of interest rate on the farmers, and they actually eventually fall into the debt trap. Okay, so in order to prevent that as well, the government has actually rolled out or panned out this particular scheme for the farmers. And here let us see what has been the mechanism of operation. So under the scheme, the income support of around 6,000 rupees per year in 3 equal installments will be provided to all the land-holding farmer families. And the definition of family over here is that the family actually has to have a husband, a wife, as well as minor children. Here, there is also direct benefit transfer, where the fund will be directly transferred to the bank accounts of the beneficiary, and this has actually been implemented under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. And here, if you see, the state government and the UT administrations will actually identify the farmer families that are eligible for actually accruing this particular support from the central government. Here, let us understand what is the inclusion and the exclusion, and what are the eligibility criteria it is actually applying in this particular scheme. So, it was initially meant for small as well as marginal farmers who had a land holding of around 2 hectares, but the scope of the scheme was extended to cover all the land holding farmers eventually. Here, the exclusion category include all the institutional landholders are not included, and the farmer families that belong to one of the following categories, that is 1, the former and the present holders of constitutional posts, the former and present ministers, state MLAs, MP, mayors of municipal corporations, chairpersons of district panchayats are actually excluded, and also all the serving and retired officers and employees of the central and the state government, and any of them belonging to state PSCs and autonomous institutions under the government are not included. And also all superannuated or retired pensioners whose monthly pension actually is around 10,000 or more. This actually excludes the multitasking staff or the class 4 group D employees of the above category, and also all those persons who paid income tax in the last assessment year, and professionals like the doctors, engineers, lawyers, then CAs, that is the chartered accountants and architects registered with the professional bodies are actually excluded from this particular scheme. And also now let us see the PM Kisan mobile app that has actually been developed under this particular scheme, which was developed and designed by the NIC, that is the National Informatics Center, in collaboration with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. And also, as I told you, if you actually have to know the difference between the CSS, that is a centrally sponsored scheme, as well as a central sector scheme, schemes which are actually fully funded by the center are called as the central sector schemes, and those which are mainly funded by the center and implemented by the states are called as a centrally sponsored scheme. And according to the 2002 budget, if you see, there are around 740 central sector schemes in India. The next article that we'll be discussing about is India welcomes Egypt, Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia as well as Ethiopia joining BRICS. So in this particular article, what is relevant or the key takeaway over here is to discuss about this organization of BRICS, which is relevant for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. So here BRICS will be discussed. It is a part of the multilateral groupings, and also this can be mapped to the current events of national and international importance for your prelims exam, and for your mains examination it is under GS paper 2 regional groupings. Okay, so moving forward, there has been a previous year question that has been asked in the year 2017 regarding the digital single market strategy seen in the news actually refers to which of the following, whether it's ASEAN, BRICS, EU, etc. So here any kind of strategy or convention and these kind of organizations, their meetings, the presidentship are all important for the examination. So moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So India has recently welcomed Egypt, Iran, UAE, Saudi as well as Ethiopia joining the BRICS as their representatives actually attended for the very first time a key meeting of the grouping which has been held or hosted by Russia. So moving forward, let us actually understand more to this. So the entry of these regions actually expands the membership of the BRICS from the current 5, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China as well as South Africa, to 10 member nations, and this actually signifies a substantial enlargement of this particular group, and this actually aims to bolster the strategic weight of this particular organization in the global affairs, be it counterbalancing Western dominance, and also it actually fosters a multipolar order. Next, moving forward, let us understand what this organization of BRICS is all about. So BRICS is nothing but it's a coalition of the world's prominent emerging economies, which consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China as well as South Africa. And the term BRIC was initially coined in the year 2001 by a British economist. His name was Jim O'Neill, in order to describe the 4 burgeoning, that is the coming up or developing economies, that is Brazil, Russia, India as well as China. And this group was officially established during the inaugural meeting of the BRIC foreign ministers in 2006. So this is also very, very important. However, in 2010, it was South Africa which actually joined the grouping, leading to the adoption of the acronym of BRICS from the earlier BRIC. And if you look at the leadership structure, the leadership actually rotates yearly among its members following the sequence of BRICS followed, okay? And for instance, in 2021, India actually held the chairmanship of this particular forum. So if you actually see here, the new members include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi as well as UAE, and the current members include Brazil, Russia, India, China as well as South Africa. Now let us understand what is the significance of the BRICS quickly. So BRICS actually unites 5 of the world's major developing nations who actually represent a substantial portion of the global demographic as well as economic landscape. If you see, they actually host 41% of the world population, 24% of the GDP, that is the gross domestic product, and 16% of the worldwide trade. And also with the inclusion of the new members, now BRICS will actually represent around 45 to 50% of the world population, nearly 30% of the global GDP, as well as approximately 25% of the world trade. Now let us quickly run through what are the key initiatives by the BRICS, okay? So the first one, if you see the economic initiatives, it has NDB, that is the New Development Bank, which was actually established at the 6th BRICS Summit in the year 2014 in Brazil. And this is actually headquartered in Shanghai, China, and this mainly focuses on funding the infrastructure and the sustainable development of the BRICS and other emerging economies. Next initiative is the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, that is the CRA, which was created in 2014 in order to provide short-term liquidity support to the member countries for financial stability. The next one is BRIC Payment System. This actually aims at developing an alternative global payment system and responds to international developments like Russia's exclusion from SWIFT. Moving forward, if we see the Trade and Cooperation Initiative, first one is the Customs Agreement. This is in order to streamline and coordinate the trade processes among the BRICS countries. And the last one is the Technological Advancement, which include the Remote Sensing Satellite Constellation, which was actually launched a constellation of 6 remote sensing satellites. And moving forward, contributions from India include 2 satellites, from China include 2 satellites, Russia 1 satellite, and a joint satellite from both Brazil and China. Now let us solve few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. The first question reads, which among the following countries is not a member of the BRICS grouping? So here Russia is a member, Iran and Ethiopia are members, where Argentina is not a member, so the answer will be option D. So moving on, the second question actually reads, with reference to that of the United Nations Convention on Laws of Seas, consider the following statements. Innocent passage for foreign vessels is allowed in the territorial sea. Yes, correct. In the contiguous zone, the coastal state's jurisdiction extends to the ocean surface and the floor but not the airspace. This is also correct. And the EEZ, that is the exclusive economic zone, extends up to 120. No, this is wrong. This is actually 200 nautical miles. So since only statement 1 and 2 are correct, the answer will be option C. Moving forward, the third question reads, the institution of the speaker in the Indian constitution is borrowed from which of the constitutional system? American constitution? No. Yes, it is the British constitution. So ultimately, French and Australian constitution will be wrong. So here the answer will be option B. So the fourth question reads, which of the following categories is not eligible for financial support? So here, not eligible is important. Here, all institutional landholders, yes, not eligible. All persons who paid income tax, yes, not eligible. All superannuated retired pensioners, no, this actually has some exceptions. And professionals like doctors, engineers, yes, they are not eligible. So since option 2, 3 and 5 are correct, the answer will be option C. So moving on, the fifth question actually reads, with reference to various schemes launched by the Government of India, consider the following statements. Schemes which are fully funded by the central government is referred to as, it is called a central sector scheme, and schemes which are mainly funded by the center and implemented by the states are called as the centrally sponsored scheme. So since both the statements are wrong, here the answer is neither 1 nor 2, that is option D. So moving forward, let us actually solve the mains practice question. The question actually reads, India's relations with that of the United States have recently become more complex and multifaceted. Discuss. So this particular question actually has an approach answer which is actually divided into 3, that is the introduction, body and the conclusion. In the introduction, we will actually mention about the evolving dynamics of the India-US relations, which are influenced by strategic, economic and geopolitical factors. And towards the body, we'll be discussing about various dimensions like the strategic convergences like that of the BECA as well as the LEMUA agreements that have been signed. Next, moving on, we'll discuss the economic ties. Next is the geopolitical challenges such as the detailed diverging views on Russia-Ukraine conflict affecting the relationship that India and US shares. Moving on, we'll discuss about the technological cooperation like the NISAR satellite program, etc. And also the cultural and human ties, that is, this actually reflects the role on the Indian diaspora in the United States and its impact on the bilateral relations. And to conclude the answer, we will actually conclude by stating the need for strategic dialogue and cooperation, emphasizing the potential benefits of a multifaceted partnership despite various challenges. With this, we've actually come to the end of the discussion. So for regular updates, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.